You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welbourn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Greetings meatbags. It is I, Chauncey, your robotic host for Power Athlete Radio. John is currently unavailable. He's in an undisclosed location, with a welding torch and two of our dragon slayers. We don't ask questions. In this episode, John and Arash tackle the chaos of internet drama, the realities of strength and conditioning, and why true athleticism isn't just about work capacity. From Jiu-Jitsu throwdowns to lessons learned in elite sport, this one's packed with wisdom, war stories, and the kind of no BS insights you won't get from keyboard warriors. So, strap in, turn up the volume, and get ready for another round of Power Athlete Radio.
I'll throw up 10 grand, donate to a charity, just show up. And if you can smash this, you can smash this, and I'm happy to acquiesce, right? And then the guy made completely took it out of context and then made a video that said, John Welbourn wants to fight me. And now it was like him versus me in a fight. And I'm like, so DJ's like, you tried to use logic on the internet.
Yeah.
And you were trying to act logically as you would do. Like in football, if somebody talks shit, we got a chance to go play against them.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, if somebody's running their mouth, you're like, okay, let's show up to open mat, dude.
The mat doesn't lie.
Yeah. And so I kind of threw that out there because there's a lot of CrossFitters that do jiu-jitsu. And I was like, we don't do CrossFit. We lift weights. You can come lift weights with us, or you can just come and roll and do jits. And normally if somebody will come and roll with you, they end up being a pretty good dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't want to roll with shitheads.
No.
And so that's how I thought it was. But then the guy ended up with some 40-minute YouTube video of basically of all the stipulations for him to fight me. And I'm like, these fucking people are so dumb.
Did he have any station or?
The reason I threw it out there was he was a collegiate wrestler.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he wrestled 165 for a year or two at some obscure place, and the best thing he ever did was losing. Never had a winning record. He's 5'10", 165. So I was like, well, shit, at that size, we got Noah, we got Philippe. I mean, there's a lot of guys for him to roll with. And then he's like, I'm only going if I get to fight John Welbourn. And I'm like, so.
And then you get your DPAP, and then you DPAP him, and then you wrestle him in the dog fight, and you just play your guard game.
What are you talking about? I would hopefully let him double leg blast me, right into the fucking half guard,
so you can show off your diamond, and get him in a triangle.
Well, after you did that tornado move on me when I went to go do DPAF, I was like, damn it, I need to learn that tornado.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about that tornado. That was a good move.
Yeah.
Because I was there.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah. And then you tornadoed me and got me right back into the position.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to do is, you remember in the Dave Chappelle thing where he did Prince, where Prince sits down, he's like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
You guys want to play basketball? And they start laughing. He's like, how about you guys versus my vibe versus the revolution.
Yeah.
And then they were like, shirts versus blouses. And so in my mind, I was imagining we could be blouses.
Yeah.
That we could be Prince and the revolution. And we could go out there, and then these CrossFitters would show up with no shirts on, ready to go, and it's
we just have Philippe show up in Havaianas,
and the pirate shirt from Seinfeld
with a mocha in their hands,
dude. So I imagined the most hilarious situation of somehow getting these dudes to show up and being like shirts versus blouses, and then because. It's pretty hilarious that, and at least the thought was you can access the entire CrossFit world, and you guys can show up and roll with just the dudes that come and train with me here.
Yeah. I
mean, with Philippe and Victor and Shanji and Lovato and you and Marty and all the dudes that train. I mean, Big Matt.
Yeah.
And the crazy wrestler dudes he knows. I'm like, we'll take everybody. Come on.
Yeah.
And I was like, we might get smashed. And if there's dudes that show up and smash us, well, dude, I'm happy to learn on how they did it. And I'm a crappy blue belt, and I will happily get my face smashed in by people. But I think at least then it would be hilarious. I would have a good sense of humor, and it's funny. And then what was wild was these dudes make this crazy ass video. And I don't watch YouTube videos for these dudes, and I don't read the comments, but some people were screen capping, and like these dudes were pretty hostile towards me, and I was kind of laughing. I'm like, you mean like the 48-year-old dad of 3 who's been married for like 15 years and raises millions of dollars for a cancer charity benevolently and helps people and basically likes to fabricate and weld and work on his land. And
your fault is that you were in the NFL for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's really what they're attacking. And what they're not seeing is that we're all united in getting people moving. So it actually would be a beautiful collaboration.
It would.
Like, come on out here. Like, let's go one-on-one. And if you guys win some stuff, that's actually great. You know, why not?
Yeah, we were happy to teach. But yeah, it was funny. These people were like, fuck that guy. I hated him. I'm like, and I always go back to that old one, which Matthew McConaughey said, hey, goes, you got a problem with me? Call me. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
If you don't have my number, you don't really know me well enough to call me. So we don't really have a problem. But man, in my mind, I imagined, seriously, I was like picturing Dave Chappelle and Prince. Yeah. And like right now, Jacob, I'm going to get you to cut that clip so people will know what I'm talking about, where I'm like, shirts versus blouses. And then we show up with pirate shirts.
Game.
Blouses. And then we would make them pancakes.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, you want some pancakes, bitches? And it'd be hilarious and it'd be fun. And the guy completely took it and made like hyperbole and this crazy deal out of it. And like,
this has all happened
while you were gone.
1 week I left you.
Yeah. While you were out there racing side by sides with Shrek, I was at home,
dealing with the internet.
Well, I got kids. I got Cashy's baseball. I got Jamie's basketball. Kelly's running track in this. So I had like an entire weekend of kid stuff. And then I spent all day Sunday mowing the grass and basically working in the creek and doing all of the stuff that I have to get done. All of this was going on independent of me.
It's so hard to reply to people too with that jitterbug phone you use for senior citizens, right? So like...
The jitterbug phone. You mean the iPhone?
No, do you know what I'm talking about? It's that flip phone they give senior citizens that just has 4 buttons on it.
Dude, it was funny. I Big Matt doesn't have any social media and he hates it. So I sent him these updates and he was like, I was like, what do you think? He's like, tell him to bring everybody. Yeah. Tell him to bring the world.
Bring the world.
And he's like, he goes, dude, I'll fucking fight anybody on anything. I'm like, dude.
Put the pierogi down and then get your wrestling shoes on.
Dude, Big Matt was all excited. He's like, I'm going to go try on singlets, see which one I want to wear. And then he's like, but this guy won't wrestle me. And then it was funny because the guy said folk wrestling, which I had to look up. I guess it's collegiate.
Yeah, collegiate.
Yeah. And like Matt's like, oh yeah, no, I dude, that's what I did my entire life. I'm happy to do it. So
yeah.
And then the guy was like, it has to be you versus me. And there's all these stipulations. And I'm like, I get it that these guys exist on the internet as kind of like YouTube trolls, and it's part of that to generate hits and whatnot. And so I understand it. It's actually funny. One of the guys DM'd me and he's like, I don't really want to go down this road. And I'm like, yeah, because, and actually I thought the stuff he was posting was funny. I appreciate that these guys are funny and have a good sense of humor. Kind of like, the Craig Jones versus Gordon Ryan deal.
Yeah.
I laugh hysterically because Craig is so funny, but a little piece of me dies for Gordon because he's invested his entire life into mastering jiu-jitsu to be the best grappler and, the greatest ever. And the guy goes out and, beats everybody. And yet he can't get a lick of respect.
No,
because Craig is just there raining meme after meme. I mean, the fact that he's in the favela with the blonde hair and the tattoos.
You know what the tattoo he got was too?
What?
It was Guarana, like the soda. He just got the logo of the soda on his arm.
Just so
it's
random.
So good.
It's great.
A little bit of WWE goes a long way.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Are you pushing through performance roadblocks caused by pain or janky movement mechanics? Knock the rust off with our movement health courses, used by thousands of athletes worldwide, from average Joes to MVPs. Our courses give you the tools to assess and fix yourself so you can get back to break-in necks and cash in checks. Not convinced? Get a taste of how our courses can help you by enrolling in a free sample today. Head to powerathletehq.com and search courses from the menu. Now back to the show. Well, and I understand it, and I get a good sense of humor out of it, and I laugh, and I think it's funny. But I do wish that these cats would find a way to recruit jiu-jitsu players from around the world under the CrossFit banner and show up and
see what they can produce.
Yeah, and what's good about jiu-jitsu, different than like a fight. Like, I don't really want to fight anybody. No. Because one, I don't want the legal implications, and I don't want that form of negativity around me. So I tend to just like cut people out that are like that. But the one thing that I do like about jiu-jitsu, every time we go to open mat and everything, you always get done, and like people are always seem to be much better friends. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it'd be funny and laugh and realize that we're probably a lot closer than we are farther. It's yeah. So
MMA is a little bit different than boxing too, in that I think a lot of the MMA guys do jiu-jitsu or have to train with the same guys around the world, and maybe they've been at different fight teams. So you see at MMA matches, there's a lot of shit talk at the beginning, but then after the match, they're shaking hands and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, whereas boxing, the shit talking's before and after, and it never leaves.
Never leaves.
So they'll bring in fighters into fight camp, but like there's a legitimate hatred for it. So it's a little different than jits. And I think with jits too, there is a closeness that if somebody is of low moral character, or I don't want to roll with them, I just don't even want to engage with them.
Yeah.
So it's not a fist fight. It's not anything. I've never gone into a jiu-jitsu thing thinking like I'm going to try to hurt this guy or mess him up. Yeah. I'm thinking like, how do I demonstrate my proficiency?
Yeah. Fuck them up is not even in my mindset.
It was hilarious. You were there. I didn't have any internet coaching, so I was out there, but it was just one comment that I made trying to bring some form of level of, sanity to people that are searching for outrage. And like, that's how they make their monies off of clicks. And it's kind of funny.
I'm glad you survived it.
I know. I mean, what was I going to do? Pack up shop and just go on and like, wander into the desert and be like kicking a rock in the box boy? Oh, yeah. Dude. I don't even exist on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, we post, but like I have, it was.
You don't even have a crypto coin.
Yeah. I know. I don't have a meme coin.
Even Hawk Girl has one.
Trump has one.
Yeah, Trump has one.
Ivania has one. Yeah. Melania has one. Yeah. I mean, doesn't Elon has one? He has Doge.
Yeah, he has Doge.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm waiting for it, but yeah. We hang out with Brazilians and cook picanha and wear Havaianas. So it's an interesting deal. So I'm glad to fill you in on all this. It was hilarious when it was going down, and then like Ben and a bunch of like the coaches and the people that we train with were like chiming in this, and it was a lot of chirps, man. It was funny. I just thought it would kind of materialize in these dudes just showing up and being like shirts versus blouses.
Yeah.
And it didn't. Arash, for the listeners, where did you coach? This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
So I coached, my collegiate career was kind of short, but I started off as an intern at Sanford, and then I got my first job at Santa Clara University, and then I ended up taking a little temporary position at University of Southern California. So I was surrounded by really great coaches and kind of tested by the fires of really strong coaches and strong methodologies. But when I was an intern at Stanford, that was kind of my first taste of triphasic training. And Tyler Friedrich, who was our director there, was a big fan of that. Yeah. And what we did see was that, in my initial, my green eyes is that, everybody has to develop proficiency in the movements so that we can use them correctly. But also everybody had attributes and profiles that that kind of tailored the training to their profile, right? So sure. we're trying to improve specific attributes to. We're trying to tailor the training to those specific attributes that we're trying to build.
But you were training athletes that had an end goal. Like they were, they were
volleyball players.
Yeah, they were collegiate
wrestlers.
athletes.
Yeah,
that they were coming in to train for their sport. So there was probably specific characteristics of each athlete that you were trying to improve on. So everybody's training was slightly varied a little bit, just to try to improve those characteristics. Like if you're a volleyball player in the front, you got to be a jumper. There's going to be a little bit of focus on that. And while there's a training for athleticism and movement, there's also specific things that these people are doing. I mean, like in football, same thing. And like that's where, but like you're talking about athletes that are getting not paid to lift weights.
Right.
They're getting paid to perform on the court, on the pitch, on the field, whatever it is. And like, that was me in the same right. And that's like, you guys in jiu-jitsu, like you don't get paid to lift weights. We use this as a vehicle. I think what's a little confusing for a lot of people, especially in the kind of the CrossFit and the IROCs and that, like the training is the test. It's like in Olympic lifting, right? Like snatch, clean and jerk, right? You snatch, clean and jerk, you back squat, you do that. And then you go test, snatch, clean and jerk. So I think for a lot of people, I am training specifically. Right, I am doing SPP. The GPP training is that, and it's kind of an interesting kind of shell game in that, if you remember, there was a guy that won the CrossFit Games named Mikko Salo. I think he was from Finland, and he was. This is back in the day, and when they asked him, they ran up after he won the CrossFit Games and put a mic in his face and said, Mikko, tell us about your training. He's like, oh, I lift weights and I do a lot of trail running, and then I just learned the movements, and they took the microphone away, and like it was a big thing because he didn't stand up there and say, oh, I do CrossFit this, and like that was one of the original guys. And even Matt Frazier, who was an Olympic lifter, broke his back, got into CrossFit, and there's this kind of like weird kind of friction that probably the masses make between him and Rich Froning. I don't know if he dove into that as well. So the thing which is fascinating, especially with fitness and like religion and all this other stuff, and we see it too with nutrition and diet and jiu-jitsu, whatever, like when people get into shit, it becomes their identity and they go deep. And then if anybody says anything that kind of doesn't coincide with the identity they've created, then they have to literally attack it more so than look at it and be like, all right, well, I hear this. I can still go on with my life. Yeah. Like there's things I see on the internet all the time that I don't agree with. And you know what I do? I just keep scrolling or I just go on. And it's pretty interesting that people feel the need to like stop and fight and battle everything. It's it's a different type of mentality. But I mean, I think for when you're coaching your athletes, especially like when you're in the collegiate setting, like you're either athletes get better or they don't, and if they don't, you get fired and they bring in somebody new. Like there's really no arguing about it. There's no getting on there and creating imaginary lines, pissing at the wind. You either perform or you don't, and if you don't, then you don't get to be there, and they find somebody else to do it.
Yeah, and I also think that's the tricky thing is you also have to find ways that you can add value, right? So specifically to an individual, it's like, I have to figure out what part of training adds value to my life. And it doesn't add value to be consistently burnt out trying to see how many fucking burpees or, bar jump. What do they call them? When they jump over the barbell and then do a burpee.
Bar over burpees.
Bar over burpees. I mean, did that add value to your life? I'm not sure. I mean, what direction are you trying to go? So.
But if that's what wakes you up in the morning.
If that's what wakes up in the morning, then make
more
that.
Power to you.
Yeah, but you have to assign value to that, right? You have to know where it fits in. Otherwise, we're just, it's just like eating fast food, in my opinion, but mindlessly enjoying it. In honor of all the internet drama, can we start with Seneca?
Yeah. You can't polish a gem without friction, same as you can't develop as a man without trials. So like adversity is what builds people. I heard a great quote the other day. I posted it on my social media. So I hadn't done it in a while, but it was, men are a lot like flatbeds. They tend to drive straight with a heavy load.
Right.
Like, I mean, think about it. Like, and it came from a podcast that I haven't been able to find the clip. So if you guys are familiar with the quote, you can send me the podcast. But the guy was talking about like in cultures, there's kind of a rite of passage moment for boys to become men. And that through culture, adolescence didn't really exist. You were either a boy or a man, and there was something that allowed you to like cross over that bridge. There was a moment kind of similar to the movie 300 where he sends the boy out with the spear and he goes out and he kills the wolf and he comes back the king. Mm-hmm. There were these like marked ways for boys to become men. And now we live in this like weird adolescence where a boy becomes an adolescent and maybe he becomes a man. And there's a lot of 30-year-old adolescents that like being able to shoulder responsibility and be able to drive straight and provide for others and be able to provide a service, you know, whether it be, you know, to mentor or develop or raise your own family.
Yeah, like the whole idea that, hey, you're only, like, it seems like from middle school, high school, and even the first 4 years of college, you're like, hey, your only job is to go to school and do the best you can. And something inside me is like, is it really though? Like, I got to leave behind all my problems and not deal with any of them. And the responsibilities I have to my family, even as a high schooler or even as a college student, I feel like just as you said, that's a really good time to bridge, you know, the childhood to the adulthood, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went through this, right? I mean, obviously you graduate high school and I went to college, and all of a sudden there I find myself in college, and, you know, I walk into my first class with 800 students. And I remember that first semester I wrote papers, and I thought that I could do the same amount of bullshit work that I did in high school and continue into college. And all of a sudden you turn in that first paper and comes back with like a C-.
You're like, what the
hell?
And
red writing, like you need to come to my office hours, and you show up and the teacher gives you this come to Jesus moment of like, I realized that probably high school was a little easy and you probably just skated through and did the bare minimum. But that is going to get you to fail out of here, and you're here for a football scholarship. So all of a sudden having this like real moment where like, hey, I'm here to do something. They're employing me. And back then it was much different than it is today with the NIL, but we were expected to be students. And I remember like taking these classes and like taking this personal responsibility to do all the things that, you know, I just kind of skated through where, you know, you got to pay bills and you're managing and doing all these things. And, you know, being able to like, you know, have a social life and manage this and do and everything. And it was, it's not like I had to go to war. It wasn't like I had to, you know, fight against starvation or any of the other things that are happening around the world. I got a chance to go on a football scholarship, but you know, the pressure that I placed on myself and the expectation was a high one. So then you proceed through that. And then all of a sudden you know, for me, I got drafted in the NFL, and at 23, like, when do you become a man at this point? Like, people treat you like a man. You're negotiating your own contracts, or, you know, working with somebody and they're paying you a man's salary to do a man's job. But at some point, I'm still getting paid to play a game.
Yeah.
And that was always a weird thing, especially when I'd hear guys in like the pregame get in and they start giving these like war analogies, like, we're going to war in this. And I'd be like, dude, we're dressing up in these game unis and we're going to go out and push each other around while people get shit-faced drunk and beat each other up. Like, this isn't a fucking war.
Playing a schoolyard game.
Yeah. And it's still playing a game. And what's so fascinating is it's very easy to kind of take it for granted, and then also allow people to kind of build you up and almost make some like weird exceptions. Oh, well, they're a professional football player or they're a professional athlete, and like people kind of give you a wide berth and they just kind of allow you to not develop as a human. And the one thing that I always did through my NFL career is I continued to read. I know it sounds so dorky now, but reading people like Seneca, and especially, you know, starting as kind of a stoic in a lot of ways, and then transitioning more into like an existentialist with like, you know, Nietzsche, and reading Dostoevsky and a lot of the stuff that I read, I would go back and reread that. And there was always this idea of like hardship and challenge, like put yourself into the deepest water and see how long you can swim. Yeah. And we did that in the training space. I did that in football. And then all of a sudden one day decides like, you know, I didn't make the decision that the game wasn't there anymore. And you're looking around and figuring out like, now what? Mm-hmm. And that podcast that I went on with Judd was me describing the story, or, you know, from 17 years ago. I mean, it's hilarious that people are upset about a story that I relayed from 17 years ago that resulted in the creation of CrossFit football. Mm-hmm. You know, as I got into it with Glassman and we talked about athletic training, was CrossFit athletic? I'm like, no, it's general physical preparedness. There's a reason that in Zadaskorsky and Verkhoshansky's model, there was a transition of GPP to SPP. Mm-hmm. And if you want to train athleticism, you're going to have to move down the spectrum. And that was the conversation that ended up, Greg said, great, sounds good, you do it. Yeah. And we started CrossFit football. And then for the next 9 years, I traveled the world teaching hundreds of seminars and coaching thousands of athletes and putting them through a 2-day strength and conditioning diagnostic model. And it was pretty interesting to see what people could and couldn't do. And when, you would ask for people for their experience, and all of a sudden somebody would show up and actually crush it. And I'd be like, what did you do before this? Oh, I played football. I was this. And there was always some form of like athletic performance at a high level. Like we had a guy show up one time who the hardest workout, I guess, in CrossFit history is called Calsu, which was a CrossFit football workout. And a guy posted like a 12-minute Calsu. There weren't people that could finish it in an hour. There was a pretty interesting thing that the people that showed up to the CrossFit football seminar that had been doing CrossFit that had some form of athletic background, it made a lot of sense to them and that there was a transition. And I never knew that this was an issue. I just figured that like this is just farther down the road. Like you build a base of GPP and you have to progress into this other space. And, even CrossFit's definition of learn, new sports and practice them regularly fit within that.
Yeah. So what do people misunderstand when they hear that statement? That you said work capacity and athleticism are the same thing.
So where that, like being, as you know, I class myself as a modern rhetorician, having, sat and had deep conversations with the smartest people that have ever walked and roamed the earth, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and these different individuals. I make these kind of philosophical, rhetorical, observational statements. You've heard me, do it. Like one of my favorite ones I made in the NFL was in the absence of true leadership, false prophets appear. Mm-hmm. Where that came from was when I was a young guy, we didn't have any defined leaders. And then we just had random people that just started screaming things. Like all of a sudden, the one guy that didn't practice all week or didn't play hard in practice, all of a sudden wants to bring everybody into the shower to give some fucking pregame speech. Or the guy that wilted and didn't want to practice when it was, 100 degrees and 2-a-days, faking an ankle injury. That's the guy that wants to get everybody hype and lead everybody on the field on game day. And so what I realized is in the absence of true leadership, these guys are false prophets. And what do prophets do? They prophesize. They make outlandish claimants more so than bring everybody up. And the dude that's saying this is the guy that's been there moving the dirt, busting his ass. We're going to go out there and we're going to get this done. We're going to come back in here and we're going to celebrate. Like there is no fucking magic behind this thing. Mm-hmm. So I made that statement. I also made another great statement, which I actually borrowed from the gladiators, which was Ave Caesar morituri te salutant, which is the only Latin I remember, which is Hail Caesar, those of us about to die salute you. And they asked me, what goes through your mind as you're about to run on the field? And I told them that. And the guy looked at me like I was crazy. But I was like, this is the modern equivalent of the gladiator games. I mean, this is the Colosseum. You have people up there screaming for blood and fighting this. And, we are the modern day gladiators. But the statement I made was the best trick that Greg ever played was convincing the world that work capacity and athleticism were the same. And that came not just as a statement that Greg made, because he never made that statement. That was me observing not only the CrossFit community, but going out and teaching hundreds of seminars around the globe and talking to people who would come in and do the CrossFit football seminar and couldn't do things that we asked them. And they were perplexed. How come I can't change direction? How come I can't do this? I thought I was an athlete, right? And I thought I was athletic because I was working out. I'd never done anything athletic. I pick it up. I can do a thruster. I can do all these movements. Why can't I do the things that you're asking me to in this seminar? And that statement came not just off the cuff because Greg said anything, because he never said anything. Mm-hmm. It was a historical revision of them going back. And it was pretty interesting. The original mission was very clear when Greg presented it to me. We're going to have CrossFit endurance on one side. We're going to have CrossFit football on the other. And then CrossFit's going to be in the middle, and we're going to own the entire market. We're going to own performance training. We're going to own endurance training, and we're going to own general fitness and health. And I thought the mission was 100% clear. And then, as Greg told me later, he went to go teach a Delta event and had a bunch of drinks, and they were deep into the night and whatever. And I think some people paid some compliments, or maybe they didn't, but to CrossFit football, that like it was an evolution. And at that, it came back and the knives were out. And I actually had a very good relationship up until that point. And then all of a sudden, like these people are treating me like, like I'm a leper or I've done something wrong. And I was like, I'm marching down the road in which we agreed when I was sitting at your house with Lauren was pregnant and we were talking about this. Like the mission has never changed. Mm-hmm. My position has never changed. And that statement that I made, which I think was hilarious, because if you hear me say it, it's observational in nature. And if you can click on my thing, I'm a rhetoric major, and like I've basically been touting this for years, then you would know, much like any philosopher or rhetorician, that these observational statements are made not just off the cuff, but made after going out and teaching hundreds of seminars and coaching thousands of people around the globe. So I think the problem I run into a little bit is sometimes it's a bridge too far. Sometimes the tower is too high. You think about, we had some girl in the comments who was trying to battle us. And I'm like, dude, I've been lifting weights as a full-time job since I was 14 years old. I've got a scholarship to go. I had probably some of the best coaches I could ever hope with, Coach Hone and, Todd Rice. And then I travel into the NFL and get drafted and come in and play and get injured and have to rehab, and meet all these people from Mauro de Pasquale and all these individuals, and then travel and train with Rafael Ruiz. And Rafael is by far the best, most intelligent strength coach and performance coach I've ever been blessed to ever meet. Went out and trained with Verstegen and those guys at Athletes Performance. I mean, I was very fortunate to not only be coached by a guy named Tom Cable early in our college career, then got a chance to go work with some of the best in the NFL. And from that knowledge base, to all of a sudden get involved with CrossFit and then be able to pull from that knowledge base and then travel and not only own a CrossFit gym, so we're in there training every day, and then being able to travel in the world and basically put 2-day seminars on for CrossFitters around the world and do that for years, all while running a free programming site that allows me to get, 17,000 hits that first day. Yeah. I mean, the amount of exposure that I received, not only after my NFL career for the next number of years, like the only other person would have been probably Kelly Starrett, Coach Bergner and some of the other SMEs. I mean, those guys taught a ton of seminars as well. And when you see the same patterns over and over and over again, and, Coach Bergner with the Olympic lifting deal was teaching a skill for CrossFit. Kelly was teaching, mobility and movement and trying to make people, the CrossFitters, less injured. For me, I was tasked with creating my own version of CrossFit. And that had nothing to do with increased work capacity, broad time motor domains. And that was an interesting piece that ended up, resulting in the ending of it because, CrossFit had effectively licensed me using CrossFit football, but yet there was nothing CrossFit in my program. And I remember when the lawyer started talking to me about this, I was like, oh, I realize exactly what's happening. I can't believe you guys have let me do this long. Yeah. He took a deep breath and he's like, oh man, I'm so glad you understand. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to erode your business at all. I would never do that. That's not who I am. And so then they wanted to do a changing the thing, and then it kind of petered out. But and then we've just progressed on, and the idea of being able to continuously train and find new projects and things, and bringing you guys on was me just trying to push outside my comfort zone into something that I didn't know and something that I had kind of decided wasn't a part of me. Yeah. And here's these guys that are these gyroscope 360 athletes. Does my model of athleticism apply to them in the same way? And the only way is by testing it and immersing yourself in doing this. And it's been just an amazing journey. And I've learned so much. I mean, there's so much knowledge that it's pretty interesting when I hear people talk about it, or more importantly, when they listen to a 30, 20-second clip, and then they get polarized off of a 3-hour nuanced conversation where I actually pay CrossFit a ton of compliments and talk about, there's probably nobody on the planet that did more to put barbells in people's hands than CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And the amount of stories that I heard that about it changing lives were too many. But realizing too that GPP template, if you wanted to use it for a different thing, let's say it be Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, there's adjustments in models or to the model that needs to be made. And those comments that I made 17 years ago, and maybe the influence of CrossFit football has adjusted it such that maybe today it looks much different, but I don't know because I'm doing my own shit. Yeah. Right. Between having 3 kids and a wife and property and doing jits and working with you guys and, doing the land and, I weld, I build trucks. I mean, the amount of time that I'm focused on the people that are closest to me is 100%. Yes. So to be able to go out and see, I'd almost kind of forgot that CrossFit was a thing. Yeah. I jumped on a call with the new CEO of CrossFit after I had gone up to do that event with Shanji at the CrossFit Games last year for GoRuck. Jimmy Letchford's their CEO, and I kind of seen a little bit, and I reached out just to kind of talk to him a little bit and see the direction they were going. And in terms of health and general fitness and getting people moving and making life changes, man, those happen on the micro level at the CrossFit gym. But the minute that you decide hey, I want to train for something, I want to be able to port this over in a meaningful way, then there has to be adjustments to the model. And what happens all too often with a lot of let's call them zealots, the people early on, it's a lot like the Bible in some ways, that the original, like there's no evolution of the Bible. It's not like somebody's ever gone back to the Bible and be like, well, let's rewrite this for 2025.
Yeah.
Right. These original words. Look at Islam. I mean, the same thing. Like, this is how it was written, and the word shall never be changed. CrossFit did a lot of that stuff. Around 2006, there was this idea that the original ideas were the best, and that anybody that brought anything different was a heretic. And that, if you tried to improve upon the model, then instantly they spun it as, you hate CrossFit. Similar to this guy being like, hey, dude, you should show up and we could do like a really bitchin' almost reenactment of Dave Chappelle playing 5-on-5 basketball against Prince with the Revolution, Your Friends versus the Revolution, which was what was going through my mind. It turned into John Welbourn wants to fight me. And like, it's a great indicator of like, instead of coming together to try to like increase and improve and like build something better, it's this kind of like drawing a line in the sand and be like, you hate us, which is pretty interesting. If you think about in Jiu-Jitsu, there's a people a lot like that, right? Like, hey, this is the style I do, and like, this is the only style, and you can't go learn from anybody else. And I wonder if like the Gracies to some extent were like that. Like, we're the source, we're the only ones that matter. But there's all these people that are doing amazing things. They brought in American wrestling. They have like, now they have this thing called American Jiu-Jitsu. And I was watching, the guy that Philippe's fighting, Ronaldo Jr. I was watching some of the stuff on him and his training room and how he's training. And like, there's incredible stuff from Danaher and Gordon Ryan and like, Craig Jones has developed this incredible other style of jiu-jitsu that is so slick that like, you're watching these guys and it's amazing to see all these people that are almost like using the same blueprint but getting to the end of it, like almost like it's starting at the same story and getting to a different conclusion at the end and finding different ways. And it's so fascinating to see that. I love it. And like, it's really neat to see all the different things and then look and be like, oh man, that's a really cool. I was watching some like guard passing that Gordon was doing. That's basically the guard passing that Shanji teaches us with the over-unders and this. And I've been watching other people do it, and it's like, it's really slick. And I can appreciate it now from doing it. But what's fascinating with fitness is, and especially with CrossFit, like, here's the model. We can't change the model. But then if something does change, it's part of the model. And if anybody says anything that like maybe the model can be improved or maybe you could add to do something better, instantly you hate us and you want to fight us. And it seems hollow. It seems dumb. It seems
you start to eat your own.
Yeah. So these guys are, in a lot of ways paid opposition in a way, in that they're either doing it for clicks or they're doing it at the behest of somebody else who, wants to create this. And I don't know if you get far. The one thing I really appreciate about Shanji's jiu-jitsu is like, he brings in people like, we just had Pagani come, and Pagani has like a different style, in this, but you can see the lineage in Lovato, and he brings in these different people and they teach something very, very well. And like, here's a skill. And like, as I was talking to Shanji, and he's like, Pagani's got some really slick stuff that you should learn. And he's trying to develop everybody's game to be unique in their game. Now, I'm not a Kurokura guy.
Listen, I'm so happy that you finally did it, because I remember when Pagani came last year, you're like, I don't do little man jiu-jitsu. That seems like little man jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to do it. And then you went to the class and you're like, dude, this guy's a solid individual. Dude, I can't wait to play Kurokura guard. And dude, tell me you didn't enjoy the three little birds. Did they teach you about the three little birds?
And what's kind of funny is as I was playing off my back, as he kind of went to enter, I went to do Kurokura, and I just basically shot under, grabbed his leg, and then slammed him to there, and then got him on top and just held him in side control. Yeah. And I was trying to like pry him out like an armadillo. Yeah. And we got done, and he was like, you have to come to Brazil. Yeah. And I was like, of course, man. Like the interesting thing with fitness, and you think about like the reason that I asked that question years ago, what are you training for? And I remember Harry used to give me a bad time, like, your tagline can't be a question. Well, it grew from the seminars, because people would come over to me and they would hand me these like complex situations. Okay, this is what I'm trying to do. And as I would listen to their stories, and they always had like, hey, this is what I've done, and they give everything. And I'd always ask them, take a step back and be like, let's look at this from, from the macro. Like, what are you training for? What do you want to do? And then we can build a model based upon, said specific adaptation to impose demands. We can build a model that drives adaptation in this direction. And like, this is how we do it. And it would just helped me work backwards so that I could, because I mean, you show up to a seminar and you got 40 or 50 people and everybody wants to come and talk to you and tell you about this and wants their moment, which was fucking awesome because I just had more market research than anybody. I've had more data points. I've had the ability to go and meet all of these people. I mean, shit, not every one, because I didn't teach every seminar, because after I had kids, it became more difficult for me to travel. And then also having twins was a motherfucker. So being able to go teach those seminars just allowed me to develop a program in real time. And then I started a blog called Talk to Me, Johnny, where I started answering all these questions. And one of the questions was like, what would CrossFit football look like without the CrossFit? So I wrote a blog post called The Power Athlete Template. And then I got emails and people are like, well, can you just do that? And I was like, well, the only way I can do that is if there's some form of like back end kind of paid access, because the only way I'm going to get the data and the results that I need and like just like the feedback is if I made people pay for it. Because I couldn't get, I mean, obviously people are commenting on the CrossFit football, but like, I don't know who they are. I don't know if the numbers are legit. Mm-hmm. So we started that with Field Strong. And then all of a sudden that kind of grew to the point where like we couldn't manage it because we were using some like WordPress paid back end deal that sucked. And then we ended up moving in, and then more and more people started asking for like different variations, and we came up with different archetypes, and it kind of grew into these different pieces of programming. And, but here's the thing. I've always had a focus on this archetype of like, this is the direction I'm going. This is what I'm training for. If you just want to get in and get fit and get sweaty, there's a million different ways to do it. The CrossFit's there. I mean, you can do anything for that. And, CrossFit's attached this model of increased work capacity, broad time, modal domains as a marker for health and wellness and what. But like at the end of the day, like whether that's true or not, like that's beside me. I mean, I have really no input on that. What I'm looking for is, can I take the best athletes in the world or some of the people that come to us, whether it be the guys at Development Group or, the Brazilians that are fighting this week at the UFC, can I take those individuals that have an extremely sharp blade and make it a little sharper? Mm-hmm. Can I figure out where the weak lug nuts are and make them a little bit tighter so that they can perform at a little higher level? Can I find the missing pieces and add? And that's all we were ever trying to do. I don't necessarily work with people. And, we do kind of an annuals deal, which is pretty fun because we do a consult. I get a chance to talk to all of our customers, just like we did at the CrossFit football events. And one of the things that I don't get is I just want to be kind of fit and get sweaty. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a training outcome, and it could be the fact that we're in this niche, but that's the niche I like to live in. And for the most part, my experience with the internet involves me putting out training, being able to kind of work with our community, and then the people that are important to me, I bring closer to me, and we get, and then we involve. And if the people aren't important to me, or I don't have a relationship with them, or, something happens or whatnot, then I don't deal with them in any way. I just tend to go dark on people for the fact that I just don't have the time to invest into negative energy. Mm-hmm. And this whole thing just felt very, kind of sad a little bit that like everything gets so negative. Yeah. As a dad with kids and, daily trying to be a good husband and support my wife and do all these things. Like my job is to go straight, carry that heavy load, and to be the rock for all these things. And the
last thing you want to create is things that you need to react to, which is the negative.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that just adds to the plate a little bit more. So it seems like we always want to just put our best foot forward and hope to produce the most amount of positive outcomes, whether it's through training or
like when I walk into JITS, just like when I walk into the gym, it's always like, hey, and we always laugh and we sit down and like everybody's happy to see you.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine walking into a place. And unfortunately, when I own the gym, when we own the CrossFit gym and most of the CrossFit gyms, there was always drama. Like there was always some negatives. There was trainers and cliffs and the whole thing. And the one thing that's been nice, at least with my I don't get into the workings of the gym or whatever. I walk in, I'm happy to see people. Let's roll. Let's have a good time. I don't get involved in that stuff because I got enough stuff to deal with on my own life. Mm-hmm. But everybody's happy to see you because here's the thing. If they're not, you don't roll with them.
No.
Because you only roll with your friends. Like I said, Shanji was sitting across from me last week. And the one thing I didn't realize before I started jiu-jitsu, and even I didn't realize it until recently, was that it's a team sport.
Yeah.
You have to have teammates and friends and people you like, and like these are the people that you want to engage with because it's so close. If I have like bad energy, or I don't like this person, or they act a little weird, I just avoid them.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time. There's like, some people at jits that like don't have good energy, or they smell funny, or they do, whatever it is.
It happened to me recently, actually. I showed up, I had a twisted ankle or something like that. It was like a couple weeks ago. I won't forget it because we had a decent training session ahead of us, and then obviously the guys needed to prepare. So I tried to be the best guy I could be on that day, but I didn't have a smile on my face. I was like, I'm going to do my best today, but, And I remember afterwards, Victor's like, hey, Arash, give me 20 push-ups. I'm like, why? He's like, you haven't smiled all practice. And at first I was like, what? Like, this is not a smiling gym. But then I realized what he was saying is like, dude, you were like you were such a grump the whole time that, we are forced to be here with you. We are on the same rocket ship to fucking Mars. And like, if you're stuck in a rocket ship with miserable people, man, that is not a trip that you want to be taking. So to your point, it's like, yeah, if the guy's in a bad mood, you definitely don't want to be rolling with him.
Yeah.
Because one, that erodes a little bit of trust, because you're like, what is this guy going to do when he's in a bad mood? But also two, you don't want to make it a thing that after the roll, you're going to have animosity towards each other.
Yeah.
Who the hell needs that?
No. And it's funny, like,
I appreciate him doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
It was a nice little gut check. I was like, thanks, man.
Well,
there's still more I could be learning about this whole martial arts thing.
Well, I was laughing about like as much, not animosity, as much as we get pissed about Philippe just smashing us. The fact that like he gives me a hug and he's like, as he's coaching me through smashing me, like, okay, coach, here it comes. I'm going to choke you. And then he's like, oh, that was so much fun. And I'm like, I don't know which fun you're talking about. This wasn't fun. But then as I'm driving home, I realized how much fun we got to have.
Yeah.
And that's a thing too that I was thinking about for a lot of these guys, man. Like, I think if you're literally trying to fight the world at every turn, like maybe there is no joy, there is no happiness, and there's no fun. So, maybe at some point we'll get the opportunity for these guys to, come together and basically put a crew of, CrossFit Jiu-Jitsu guys. It's funny, they threw out Khalipa's name. They're like, Khalipa rolls. And the guy's like, I think he and Khalipa are friends. And I was like, that's true. Khalipa's come and trained with us. And I have respect for anybody that's come and will like strap it up and come into that room. Tim Kennedy, I mean, he's caught a lot of water recently. But Tim shows up and rolls, man. Like, I don't, for anybody that shows up and puts themselves out there to compete, and especially in the room at which we go into, which is deep waters, I have a lot of respect for. So maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to do, film my Prince video, Dave Chappelle Prince thing, and then we get to make pancakes. But as DJ, who works for me, made the joke, he's like, I think you come from a different time. He's like, you played in the NFL where like if a dude talks shit on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you got to see him on Sunday and fuck him up. Yeah. And like, that was kind of like an interesting thing. And he's like, and now years later, you go see these guys and there's like mutual admiration and respect. And he's like, in jiu-jitsu too, that if somebody's running their mouth, like you don't necessarily run your mouth and then run from somebody. You have to like at some point show up.
Yeah. You've coached elite athletes for decades now. Like, what's the difference between the internet experts and real world coaching?
It's usually the best coaches are some of the quietest people on the internet. We had. How
do you have the time? You're coaching.
Well, you know what? Like, there's actually we had him on Dane Miller. We had him on the pod. Yeah, that's who. Ghostface Miller, I think it is. We had him on the podcast. Fucking great dude. Coaches incredible athletes, Olympic lifting. I mean, the amount of stuff he's doing, and he's got a pretty good internet following. Posts a lot of good content. I mean, he's a legit coach, but like, look at Greg Everett. Look at, some of the best coaches are, Rafael Ruiz, for example, are coaching people in real time and doing this. And I don't know if they're focused on somehow, like working the admiration of like millions of people that don't know who you are. Like one of the interesting things is I went on Judd's podcast, and I had met Judd when we spoke at Summer Strong together. So we went to a dinner. I didn't really connect with him at the time, just because he was kind of on one side of the table and I was sitting there talking to Ed Cohen, which was pretty awesome. So I got to connect with him, and I've always been an Ed Cohen fan. We had him on the podcast. So when that got done, and then I got to hear him speak, and I thought his take on adaptation and athleticism, I was like, you know what? There's more to this. We need to talk more. So then when he reached out to do that podcast, I was absolutely floored by, one, the amount of content of mine that he had digested in preparation for that podcast. Like, the questions were insightful. He asked a lot of things. And the one thing he was most curious about, and he ended up, what started this whole thing, was he had gone back and listened to many of the podcasts that we had done. And I've literally been saying the exact same thing for years, and nobody has noticed. He posts that quote about, the best trick that Greg ever pulled was convincing the world that work capacity and athleticism were the same. Mm-hmm. And he put it up, and that's what started this whole thing. And then we got in, and he asked me about it. And I was like, this was an observational statement after coaching thousands of people and listening to story after story after story after story of people, why they were confused that they'd been doing CrossFit. They could do a thruster, they could do a pull-up, they could do these movements that were deemed athletic, and they were athletes, as their coaches were telling them, but yet they couldn't do any of the movements, or they couldn't do a lot of the things that we were asking them to, which was move through space and change direction and do all this stuff. They couldn't.
But are there ways that I can develop that with this kind of work capacity model? Like, can I still train? Because my mind goes to like preparedness for the specific task, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a way that we could develop work capacity through those planes of motion.
Yeah, you can. I mean, like Rich Froning is considered like the GOAT of CrossFit, right? I hate using that term GOAT, but guy's won more CrossFit games than ever. And the guy Bucking can go out there and just smash it, right? And like, he is there, he's on the Mount Rushmore for CrossFit. I always, in my head, was always like, he moves pretty well. Is he a great athlete? And I ended up watching a clip of him playing flag football. And he had a play where he actually rolled out to his left. I think he's a righty, and he threw across his body a dart. I mean, he moved really well. And is he an NFL quarterback? I don't think so. He played baseball, but watching him play flag football from some of the clips he posted, I was like, oh shit, this guy moves through space very well. He's athletic. He does everything. Yeah. But I guarantee he had that level of athleticism before he ever showed up. He just had this incredible ability to be able to go to a dark place and suffer more than everybody, and be on the Mount Rushmore of CrossFit. So he found that. But it was like, somebody asked me once, do you think Usain Bolt is athletic? And is running in a straight line a demonstration of athleticism?
It's really when he played soccer.
Yeah. Right? I found clips of him playing soccer, and he was killing these dudes, right? The ball was moving here and here. Same with Felipe, though. Mm-hmm. Victor has an extremely slick, brilliant form of jiu-jitsu that when you watch him, it's really good. And Felipe as well. But then when we went and played one-on-one basketball, right? And there's some things all of a sudden you see some holes in this thing. Yeah. And that was pretty interesting. Like when I watched Usain Bolt run, the guy's fastest man in the world. He moves like a gazelle. Yeah. Watching him play soccer was good. So, I mean, is Rich a great athlete? Dude, the guy's a stone cold killer. But I had to watch him play flag football to know. Mm-hmm. Kalipa won, and this is no shade on Kalipa, but then they went out and they did this little zigzag run, and he really suffered. And just because he had never trained that stuff, he had never done the change of direction. And now if you look, he's gone hard into the tactical games, and he does jits and he wrestles and he trains. So he saw, hey, you know what? Here's something that I'm lacking. Now I'm going to kind of bring it up. It's funny, Dave Lipson, who was a big CrossFitter and played baseball, and what we've, since become, been friends over the years, reached out, and he's like, I don't understand this anymore. And I was like, have we, what's kind of hilarious is you're talking about a conversation that happened when you were 10 years old between me and the creator of CrossFit, who doesn't even own CrossFit anymore. And you guys are upset about statements that were almost 2 decades old that resulted in the creation of CrossFit football. That seems crazy to me. Mm-hmm. And on top of it, you're upset that I made them, but yet look at my history, right? I played in the NFL for 10 years. I just wasn't a player. I was a starter, played at a high level. And then I came out and I taught all these seminars. So I actually immersed myself into the CrossFit, competed in the CrossFit Games, made a documentary about it. And if anybody has the ability to make a comment like that because they had created the ethos associated with it, it's me. So the fact that like anybody is saying anything and they're kind of doing it for relevance and hits and they're trying to do this whole thing. I mean, I get it. And it's funny. Like, dude, I have a sense of humor, as you know. My meme game is pretty strong, but it only extends to you guys.
Yeah. We're easy targets.
Yeah, they are. But like, I also don't care to share everything with the world.
Surely.
I have a really amazing wife. I got amazing kids, and we have, every day I am very blessed. I don't feel as if, maybe almost like, you remember how like the Indians were afraid to be able to take their picture because it was taking their soul?
Taking their soul.
I sometimes wonder if I share everything, if it takes away from it, that it takes away the, I don't know, like the magic encased with it. Like, like these pictures that I take are for me. Like, like I share them with my close friends, and I don't necessarily care to share them with people that I don't know, that I'm not invested in and engaged in.
Yeah. You want to hold those things dear that you find the most, you feel are the most precious.
And then also there's a lot of negative energy, and I don't want to put that in the universe.
Make them privy to it, right?
Yeah. Well, we had Tara Swart on the podcast, and she talked about like the idea of like what you visualize, you manifest. And so her big thing was vision boards, and we ended up having her on twice. I need to reach out and have her on again. But that idea of like, if you can see your future and you can basically, like this vision board exists and you can move towards it. Like one of the pictures on my vision boards is that same one that's right behind you right there with VH, where dude, all of a sudden, VH who, back was lit up, didn't do this. He fucking basically like lights that dude up.
He did that 3 times that year.
Yeah.
That same exact double leg. He did that 3 times.
That didn't exist before us. And before the training and before Power Athlete. And like I have that gold medal and that picture on the wall, and it's on my vision board, because not because of what we did, but because like that's what I'm trying to get to. Like, here was his game, and we brought something to it and added a piece to him, and that was important. But like that fits within, it's on Cash's vision board. And that idea of like, if you can see your reality, if you can see your future, then you can build a plan to make it happen. And, and like you said, dude, if you want to go far, like go with friends. If you want to go fast, go solo. I want to go far, and I don't want to go solo. So it's been hilarious that this thing has evolved. But I do think what's fascinating too is the guys. So back in the day, CrossFit used to have these 2 guys they called the Russells. And they were like literally like the SEAL Team 6 of CrossFit. Like anything that happened, they would dispatch the Russells. And these guys were incredible arguers. They were intelligent. They were well pointed. They were literally assassins, and they were paid opposition. Like you knew that if shit went down in CrossFit, the Russells were going to be at the forefront. That's what they got paid to do. And then when, all of a sudden CrossFit, ended up kind of breaking off and Greg selling in this, like those guys kind of, thank God, like disappeared into anonymity. I'm sure they live on like a ranch, never talking to anybody ever again for the fact that they did. And so this next generation are kind of picking up where the Russells, but they don't have the historical knowledge that those guys had. And I mean, they're pretty good at memes. They're pretty good at videos and YouTube content. So it's funny. I definitely got a good laugh. I posted a pretty funny meme that dude I thought was hilarious. But,
your favorite musical artists, take any of them. You listen to their first album and then you listen to their 8th. It's a totally different band. It's a totally different guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a similar thing is like, yeah, you're a fan of that one album, but in reality, most human beings evolve over time and they become something else. And sticking to that one ideology or one methodology of training is detrimental to you achieving the results that you want.
And it feels boring.
It's way boring.
Well, like what if, this is all I learned and you could never progress. I mean, think about religion to some extent. Like, hey, you learn these words and these are the only words you know, and you're not allowed to question it. You're not allowed to think about it. And I think what happens all too often is you get stuck in the dogma, and and I'm not saying this as a slight. I'm saying it like it's actually a marker for intelligence. I think intelligent people, when they encounter something, either they just take it at face value, or they look at it, they break it apart, they put the pieces back, they look at it again. How can I improve it? How can I make this sharper? How can I do a better job next time? Mm-hmm. And that's within my nature, whether it be building trucks or welding or any of the stuff we do around here. I always want to leave everything better than what I found it. And experience that I had and the input to be able to work with that many athletes and to really hopefully put people on a path that if they wanted to train for something specifically, then there was a vehicle for it. I think that's my contribution. And what's always funny is, I've told you the story that when I was recovering from knee surgery and ended up kind of deciding to go, take Greg's offer to work with CrossFit, the other offer was to go be a lawyer and go to law school and work with my brother. And it's funny because I think about that one, that if I had done that, I'd probably still be in California. I probably would have never waded into anything that looked like social media or any of this other stuff. I would have just gone to law school and then, gone to work with him, which I think would have been equally as fruitful, but in a different way. Was
it just to be in service to people, or what would be because I feel like that it's a similar drive no matter what mode.
What convinced me, so it was actually the CrossFit community, like the people. It was pretty interesting. It wasn't CrossFit as a training system. It wasn't CrossFit HQ and the people there. It was actually the people that I met in the CrossFit deal are still some of my closest friends. And it's just ironic that all of those people have since been attacked and shunned and pushed out of CrossFit. Like Rob Wolf, Andy Stumpf, some of the, Kelly Starrett, some of the people that I count to be some of my closest friends and some of my confidants and the people I get a big smile when I see, I met in this kind of circle. And I think it was a feeling that, like, how could this many great people and this many of my friends and people that I really cherish, like, it's pretty neat because, the NFL can be very interesting, lonely, in that you have a lot of friendships and, people that but then all of a sudden the game ends and you kind of just go on with your life, and maybe some people you stay connected to and others you don't. So it was like being kind of engaged with that kind of community again. And so when I looked at it, I was like, man, I wonder if there's more out there. And then when the mission was set, I'm very singular focused. Like, if you tell me, like, this is the goal, like, this is what I'm fighting. It's kind of like in Jits when we go, hey, we're working on this pass, or we're working on this. When we go do the free rolls, I use whatever we did in the learning piece in the free roll. And what I've realized is, as soon as I go free roll, people completely disregard it and do whatever they want. Yeah. And I get a little frustrated. I'm like, we just spent 30, 40 minutes drilling something. Now I want to use it and crystallize it, and you won't do it.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like the same type of thing. Like they laid it out. I knew what the mission was, and I thought like I was going to be part of something that was going to like take over the world. And I didn't realize that I was going to end up on the other end of a knife blade or a gun or whatever you want to call as some, for actually doing a good job. The one thing that they can't necessarily say is that I didn't do a good job, that it wasn't a good seminar, it wasn't a good product, and Power Athlete isn't a good product. So, I mean, there were people that were like, oh, I did the training and I didn't like it. Okay, well, you did it for 7 days. Like, which ones did you do? How can we help? So I think, as DJ said, you're trying to reason with people that exist in unreasonable places, and which is the internet. Like, the internet has no reason to me.
So what are some of the takeaways from the conversation? I think that was a big one, right? Is that you just put your truth out there and you let it fight for you a little bit. And then whatever does come back to you, you just have to recognize that the hard work you put into it is going to stand on its own. Right.
Yeah.
And then, but for anyone who was looking to train smarter, what do you think? People who are training for work capacity's sake, is there something that can add to their CrossFit training to, get them to where they want to be, or maybe even restructure their goals? Because I feel like I feel like CrossFit can seem like just one avenue that people will try to take.
Well, it's easy, right?
Yeah.
Like my brother's trained at a CrossFit gym, which I think is and they go in 5:30 in the morning. They train at Ryan Fisher's Chalk. I don't think it's officially a CrossFit gym anymore, but they go in and they do, they train at, I think 5:30, 6 a.m. at Chalk, and they love it. They go and they bust ass. They get to lift some weights. They get a little bit of fitness. And my brother always says, it's great. Like, if I want to go, he plays tennis. So my brother was a high-level tennis player, got into football, decided that, later in life, like, hey, I'm going to go back to playing tennis. And now he's pretty damn good at tennis. And he goes and plays in this men's group, and he loves it. He's like, I'm fit enough, but I also move around the court pretty well because I play tennis, right? He's like, I want to play golf, if I want to go ski. Like, it allows him to have a certain level of conditioning and capacity that he has a, basic GPP level that he can port it over and continues to go do it. I think where CrossFit kind of falls on its face a little bit is when people think all they have to do is CrossFit. And not to say that there's people, because everybody's doing something. Like if you want to trail run, you want a mountain bike, that last part of learn sports and like learn new sports and practice them regularly, that piece is the most important. Like, you've developed this, now go use it for something, right? And I love that people, like pick up jiu-jitsu, or they want to learn this, or they want to do all these things. They want to get into Olympic lifting, or they want to, I want to trail run, I want to do this, I want to do high rocks. Like, whatever you're doing, like, use it in a meaningful way. If the only extent of your deal is I go to the gym, I suffer for an hour, I come home, and that's all I do, and that's the extent of it, I think it falls flat a little bit, but our stuff falls flat too. If you're a fallen power athlete and you're not using it to actually go out and foster and develop athleticism and move through space and doing this, like, you're leaving, something on the table. Now, that's up to you though. I'm not casting a stone. If you just want to lift weights, as long as you're happy and you feel that you're getting better by some marker that you're placing, whether it be, you look good naked on vacation, your clothes fit tighter, you're healthier, the blood markers improve, whatever it is, like, if those are your performance goals, then go for it. For me, like, just being leaner and trying to look more jacked, like that doesn't do shit for me. Like, I don't care about that. Like, I want to be in good shape. I want to look like I actually do something physical, So if I'm like,
Ayo.
Right. Like, I want to look like I do something physical. It looks good, to still be somewhat fit. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna, I'm not showing up to jits, and as I'm fucking, tying up my gi with my 6-pack abs, dudes are just like laying down to submit. If anything, I think these muscles hurt me for the fact that, like, dudes treat me like ADCC finals every round I get. Every round. They're like, I'm not gonna let this big fucking gorilla beat me up. Yeah. And so I get a lot of like dudes that are literally like pushing to the edge of, like, I don't ever get like an easy flow roll. No. And which is fine. And when I asked Shanji about it, Shanji like looked at me and he's like, you think you would ever get that? These are no. He's like, you don't think like when the big lion that all the hyenas attack him? He's like, hyenas are always going to attack you. Yeah. And so and he's like, you can't look the way you do and not expect it. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm fine with that. But that to me is important. So what I ask people to do is like do something that validates either your fitness or your performance or anything. Whether it's, like, hey, I'm pretty fit and I do jits, and, now the CrossFit world gets a bat signal shot up so that John Welbourn can go make them pancakes and we can play shirts versus blouses, then that's what it is. If it's, a guy posted a picture the other day for me that he was like doing basically walking lunges with his 2 kids to show them like that he was strong enough to do it. I mean, kind of neat. Or we got a story the other day from, actually, I'm going to read you this because this is exactly why we do what we do. Not sure where to put this, but I just wanted to share my gratitude. My powerlifting coach introduced me to power athlete when I was in college, and I've been a believer ever since. Fast forward, my little guy spent the first 18 months in the NICU and came home on 24/7 on a ventilator dependent, plus other cool stuff. Since we live in a 2nd-story apartment, before the hospital would discharge him and load him into the car by myself in one trip, would discharge him, I had to demonstrate that I could carry the wiggly toddler and his 40 pounds of equipment up and down the stairs and load him into the car by myself in one trip. I'm happy to report that this is cake after you've done awkwardly loaded Bulgarian split squats for 10 years. Talk about GPP turned to SPP. My little dude has doubled in size since coming home with no less equipment. People are always asking if we want to put in a lift. Maybe we'll get to the point where I can't safely handle moving him on a regular basis, but at least right now it feels really good to know that I'm moving him and his accessories is just not hard, but my guy has a great life because of it. If not a performance-oriented gal at present, so sometimes I feel a little goofy trying to hang with all the killers here on Power Athlete, but I wouldn't trade this feeling of capacity and capability for anything. Gratitude to y'all, J-Dub and company. So, my little boy has type 1 diabetes. I'm going to tear up on this. And, he spent the first like couple, days of his life, when he got a staph infection in his belly button in the NICU, and he was in there 3 days. And I was like pretty sad for him, sad for myself, and I wanted my kid to come home. I can't imagine 18 months that this little boy spent, and this lady, uses Power Athlete to be able to carry him up. Like that story. And it's funny, in the midst of all this, I get this. And I sent it to everybody, and I was like, hey, man, let's never lose sight of the goal of what we're doing here and the lives that we're changing and the good stuff. And whether or not it's Power Athlete or CrossFit or however it is, the fact that she's capable and we've empowered her to be her best, to be able to be in service and help her little son, that to me is the best of what I could ever hope for. And, I look at the strength of my wife and the stuff that she's gone through and all the people around us, and, I'm in awe of it. And it's funny when you see clips of people shitting on everything and like, fuck these people and these guys. And you're like, dude, one, you don't know me. And two, it's pretty interesting that you would feel this passionate about people that are just trying to help, and do something good in the world, and hopefully put out a good message and try to make people better every single day. But then again, I will go back to the poet of our generation, Taylor Swift. People throw rocks at shiny things. And, look at her and poor Travis Kelce, man. I mean, those people are trying to live a love story in real time and just get fucking shit on nonstop. I mean, the chick's a billionaire. The dude's probably on the Hall of Fame list, like first ballot. Like he's on the Mount Rushmore for tight ends, and he gets nothing but shit on and hate. How bad is that? What do you think about that? About that lady?
It's impressive because you look back. I don't like her music, but
yeah, I don't either. But I respect what she's doing.
You got to respect it, because then you look back at her history and just started off playing songs in a cafe, and then it's like, oh, well, I got to do this thing. I got to move to. I think she went to Nashville first.
Yeah, she's from
that.
Philly.
Yeah, she had to go to Nashville and then play there, and then you just see this progression. And did that same girl in Nashville know that she was going to be a fucking billionaire? No, she just knew that she had to keep putting out material and keep practicing her craft and have to learn to play the guitar. And yeah, step by step along the way, just moving the dirt. Taylor Swift, new Power Athlete.
Yeah,
new Power Athlete.
Dude, did you hear how she trained for her concert? She basically would get on the treadmill and run as fast as she could while she was singing her songs for like 3 hours. I was like listening to her training regimen, and I was like, okay, that chick's she's a killer. I mean, and you know what? Like I said, it's not necessarily the music I listen to, but I also don't cast stones at her for putting it out and people liking it, and like people, going to the shows. And I mean, I think it's the highest grossing concert tour in history. I mean, she killed it, dude.
I appreciate the hustle.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine the amount of pressure Travis Kelce must have felt on Super Bowl day. The dude looked like he hadn't eaten in a couple days, to be honest.
He looked a little messed up. He also looked kind of lunchy. Yeah. Did you notice his body looked kind of just like dad bod? Yeah. And all it looked like was, because here's the deal, so in the NFL, I'll give you guys a little perspective on this. Obviously we played 16, now it's 17 games. So you have a set season, you got preseason, you got training camp. And so it's a set amount of time. If you go deep in the playoffs, because we did this analogy, right? Like all of a sudden you're into the playoffs, and now you're talking about an extra 4 games, let's say, to get to the Super Bowl, right? You got or 3 or 4, but it's the weeks of practice. Think about how many extra seasons that Kelce has played and how much shorter his off season has been, because they've gotten as far as they have for as long as they have. Mm-hmm. Right. So like if we had Joe Thomas on the podcast, left tackle for the Browns, never played in a playoff game. So over the course of his 10 years, he played X amount. If he had gone and played on, let's say, the Patriots and gone to the Super Bowl, he would have played like an extra 4 years of football, or 3 years, whatever it is.
The equivalent.
Yeah, the equivalent. So going to the Super Bowl and getting into that, and the emotional this, and they also were 15. What did they go, like 16-1? I mean, the energy. I think they were flat because they're just fucking tired. And you get the Philadelphia Eagles, and I was stoked to see the Birds kind of do it. I mean, it was a good game.
And Napoleonic March, right? Yeah. They've just been campaigning forever. God damn, I just want to go back home to France.
Yeah, yeah. And dude, I thought he would retire, but now he's going to come back for one more season. I hope he fucking trains his ass off, gets in shape, and and takes a run at maybe being the best. I mean, it's going to be tough, as good as Tony Gonzalez was, and Gronk's talking about coming back, which I think is even more hilarious. Those guys are so good, but he's up there. It's shit, dude. I think we got time for at least one or two more questions, but I think we covered everything.
I know. I tried to throw in some of those questions, but then you went. You covered everything. I wanted to go back and ask. I'm like, oh, covered. Oh, covered. Oh, covered.
Yeah. I don't necessarily know what we could get into, but Harry did have an interesting one. There's a big misconception online that general physical preparedness is the same athletic training, and we kind of covered that for a lot. And for those of you guys that don't, geek into the, like the kind of the, I guess you could say like the Mount Rushmore, to use that term again, of strength conditioning, you have to go back and read Science and Practice from Zadaskorsky and go read, Verkhoshansky's work and start understanding, this idea of where GPP, general physical preparedness, came from, because CrossFit didn't invent it. Louis Simmons, West Side, those are the guys that made it popular, but there was always an idea and there was a training. I mean, we had, Boyd Epley on the podcast, and we talked about the Nebraska circuits, the metabolic conditioning cycles.
First strength coach ever.
Yeah, the best.
The title of strength coach.
And Bill Kramer, who I have his book, and we're trying to work a podcast where he comes in person. Bill Kramer wrote, we had, my good friend of mine sent me their new book. And, there's this idea of creating a base level of conditioning, this base level of GPP at which to build on. That's what they use the metabolic conditioning cycles, that this, the physiological effect of doing this form of training allows them to create a platform at which they can build upon. And that's why in every one of these training programs, when you look at them, there was always blocks of this. I mean, even if you look at Cal Dietz's triphasic, right, he will break up 2 weeks of focused muscle contractions with a GPP block, right? Because he knows that if you can keep conditioning high, that there is a greater lasting effect going into it. So if we do an eccentric phase for 2 weeks, there's going to be a GPP block, and then you get into isometric GPP block, and then get into the concentric side of it. So, I mean, there is value on keeping a high level of conditioning.
Yeah.
And, submaximal efforts looking to do it. Now, if that's all your training just looks like a GPP block, then that's great if you just want to do that. But I think what we're looking at it from we're two people viewing it from different shores. So there has to be, if there's a general, there has to be a specific.
Yeah, there has to be a direction that you want to go. So I think that's probably more fundamental to the whole the training apparatus that we're creating, is that you have to know what your goal is. And that will always help you find the tools that are required for it. Otherwise, you could be spinning your wheels figuring out what training program is best for you. But in terms of athletic training, we're really trying to identify what direction you're trying to go as an athlete and what attributes we're trying to add on to it.
Well, dude, that's all I got.
That's all I got, Coach.
Dude,
thanks for having me on again. I hope.
I love when we come and do the Q&As.
Especially after a week apart. That's so hard. It's like I barely know you because we haven't rolled in about 9 days.
Well, what's even more funny is you lost your phone. And as I was texting you as this was going down, I kind of shot you some stuff. I didn't get any response. And I was like, man, I hope Arash is okay. I was thinking I was going to get a phone call that was like, John, I need your help. I need you to be in Arizona in the next 10 minutes to get
I'm in Tijuana. I'm on the third floor of Hong Kong.
I'm with John McPhee and we're in Hong Kong. I need you to get here quick.
There's some freaking Colombian pirates there.
I'll be like, all right, okay, I'll be there quickly. Hold on, let me get Matt.
Well, that's a great symptom, right? If I'm not communicating, then you guys are like, oh fuck, there's something wrong with him.
Yes, yeah. Are you going to be able to make it to Vegas for the UFC?
No, I don't think so. I got to hold down the fort. Everybody's out of town.
I get it. You got a business to run, and they need you to stay at home and keep the home fires burning. I will be thinking about you.
Likewise.
So, well, dude, thank you for joining me on Power Athlete Radio, and thanks for tuning in. See ya. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by kofi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.